and he was, at the time I got to know him, the poorest man I've ever known. He was poor because of his living conditions. He was poor because he had alienated himself completely from his community. He was poor because the arrogance in his heart kept him from a relationship with Jesus Christ. He was poor. He lived in a house. It was a 3-room house. Front room was a living room, middle room was a kitchen, back room was a bedroom. What they call a shotgun shack, right? I mean, you could almost touch the wall on both sides. Tiny little house. And the kitchen and bedroom, the roof in both of those rooms was fallen in. I mean, you walk from the front room where he slept, where he did most of the things that he would do, into the next room, and you could look up, and there's a gaping hole in the ceiling, in the roof. Didn't have any water at the house. He'd have to go next door to get water. And for some reason, God made me see him. There was a whole community of folks that refused. They wouldn't see him. He was hard to get along with. The first thing I remember him ever saying to me was vile and disgusting. He was just not an easy person to get close to. Yet God did something there. And I just began to visit with him. And then before too long, every Tuesday we were meeting. And not long after that, every Tuesday when we meet, we'd go eat some breakfast. I'd pick him up and take him to a donut shop or somewhere, and we'd grab a bite of breakfast. And about once a month, we'd take a trip up and go pay a bill he had at the check cashing place. And then we began to read the Bible together. He agreed to read the Bible with me. And we started in the book of James. And we read James because James is so good for everyday life. And when we finished James, we started the book of Joshua. I thought, let's go Old Testament. Let's see what it does to Joshua. And then we read the book of John. It didn't take us near as long for he and I to read through it as it has for us to preach through it. But we read the book of John. And in the process, somewhere in there, he found out he had cancer. And he wasn't going to take any treatments. And by the time we got through toward the end of the book of John, I walked into his house one day. He's laying on the couch again, and he'd withered away. I mean, he's an old man, but he was still strong when I met him. And by this point, it was just skin and bones, but his old belly was just distended out real big. The cancer was taking its effect on him. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I said, well, it looks like we're coming to the end of these meetings, aren't we? And tears just welled up in my eyes. And one more time, he leaned up on that elbow, and he looked me in the eye, and he said, preacher, you don't worry about me when I die, because I know where I'm going. I've read in this book, and I've given my life to him. Sometimes the gospel is for folks you don't see. And God has to make us see them, even though they're like the next group. The gospel is for folks we don't like, we don't trust. Yet in all the time I've been going from place to place and getting to know people and sharing the gospel every now and then along the way. And all the times I've met people and come across folks, I've never met any of them that Jesus didn't die for.